All right, Tuesday, February 17th, 9 a.m., Zoning and Land Committee for Ashland County. We'll do a call to order, roll call.
Blake Ellefson,
Here.
Gary Ader,
Here.
Jim Schultz,
Here.
Pat Kenny,
Here.
Paul Wilharm. Is Paul Wilharm online today? Roll call complete, thank you.
Okay, moving along, public comments. Anybody in online or I don't see anyone in here. We'll ask couple more times here. Does anyone have any public comments?
Mr. Grady,
Yes,
can
Luis.
you hear?
Luis or Lewis?
Louis Ballas.
Louis Valance. All right, go ahead.
I am the gentleman with the Amtrak resolution letter of support. I was wondering if you guys would be willing to put that on this committee so we can get that to the general board, so we can get this Amtrak letter of support passed, so I can get that to the Wisconsin Department of Transportation as well as the U.S. Department of Transportation and Amtrak officials.
Well, this
Uh,
isn't an item on the agenda. So I think what you're saying is we need to have you added in the future to a meeting so that you can speak about that as a agenda item.
Well, was told at the regular general board meeting that I would have to come to a committee, and I uh, saw today's meeting was going to be on, and I thought it would be appropriate to because it's zoning and planning. So
No, I get that, but we only talk on public comments on the agenda items. So what you
okay,
need to do is send your agenda item topic to the Dan Grady at the administration so that we can have that added to the appropriate agenda.
okay, no problem.
Yep.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right.
Do we have any other public comments? Okay, hearing none, we will close the public comments and move to approval of agenda. Is there anyone here who would like to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Aders got a motion,
Schultz will second.
got a second. All those in any comments around the agenda? No comments? Okay. All those in favor of approving the agenda as is? Aye. Those opposed? All right. That move forward to number 4. Approval of the minutes of our January 20th, 2026 Zoning and Land Committee. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Okay, we've got a motion by Mr. Hader. Sorry. Looks like we've got
Pat will second, and then I have a comment.
Pat's going to make a second and he's going to follow with the comments. So
So going further up, on what you have displayed there, in that right there, 5A, Pablo was mentioned. Could we have both a first and last name to that individual?
Yes, Pat, sorry, I did realize this morning, I did find the name, the first and last name, so I do plan on editing this after the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
and just so we're clear, he does have a business in Ashland County, Superior Fence right now. So. Okay, if we're okay with the approval of the minutes, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Okay, moving forward. Number 5, zoning, discussion action items. Item A, issued permits, revenue account.
Okay, you can see on your printout there, January of 2026. Grand total of 3,190 for the month of January.
So the top one there, that Coyote Hills now, that's a sanitary.
Yep, that's a sanitary. That was, the reason that's probably showing up a little later is it was for the last building that was built. And it wasn't, I guess probably the best way to put it is, it wasn't in the very first sanitary plan. So I called the DSPS and they wanted me to just do it separate. So I didn't add it to the campground plan itself. It actually shows it's a separate system.
Now, I was under the impression that these were holding tanks that get pumped.
Yes, correct.
There's no mound system, is that correct?
No mound system.
Now, for a sizable building like that, is that kind of the way forward that we would want to see it, is a holding tank versus mound systems?
Well, ideally, there'd be a treatment system, but that would, on clay soils, the only treatment is a mound. So you got to have a lot of room.
Any other items of discussion for anyone on that? Nope. Okay. I guess the big topic is number B then, moving along. The solar discussion, solar power. And we had a list of questions that were posed by one Mr. Kinney, right, Pat?
Right, can we display those for there we go. Okay,
And I
thank you.
think we do have a representative online and then here directly from Excel. So thank them for sending someone to talk to us. Ashland County, where we're located, is obviously rural. And what Pat and I think the ultimate goal of our zoning group here is to try to keep our local taxpayers and ratepayers in a good spot. We've got a lot of fixed income folks, right, who are aged into their houses. And so trying to come up with a solution for Ashland County to be a part of the development with Excel so that we stay local with the profits, because our concern, which is what we've seen in other communities, is where a large developer comes in, spins up a big project with some tax credits, and then that developer gets a lot of the fees up front. And so what we want to try to do is have collaborative discussions with Excel, because we're in the market with you, we're a partner. And so hearing from you guys is always important, because you're the ones who would help us as our energy providers. So Pat, is there anything else you want to add before we have them speak?
Yeah, I wrote some questions here, but I also want to give you a little more background just to frame this. So we've been talking about solar a bit on both zoning and finance for some time. The third week of December, I received a letter from a company looking into put in a utility scale solar farm in Bayfield County, including on land that I own there. So they've sent out letters talking to people there. So I've been kind of immersed in this from that issue too, on how to respond to that and think about, the impact of something like that out there. So some of the questions are framed in part by that. So I realized there would need to be, at least in that case, an upgrade to the high voltage transmission line there. There's a substation south of Ashland, which, may need to be upgraded depending on, what happens here in the future, including if there's some community solar, smaller projects under 100 megawatts. So the Public Service Commission has oversight over permitting what they call utility scale solar farms, meaning 100 megawatts or bigger. The Ordock solar farm by Xcel Energy there is 0.7 megawatts. So a utility scale is 214 times or more bigger. So differences in scale, but also differences in economies of scale with this. And so as projects are permitted, there's a process, and it varies through the country. So that's one reason to talk locally. How do things work here in our market with transmission lines, power providers, et cetera, because it can vary. But at some point, different groups looking to put in solar have to talk to each other. The company buying the power would have to presumably enter into a power purchase agreement, and they would have to know what's going on with others and what's planned. So they get into basically a queue. So all this planning goes in there so everything makes sense. So I say that because we may have something going on in this area that would then impact what, if anything else, somebody else does. So with that background, this is a sort of short list of questions compared to my longer list of questions. So how does Xcel Energy determine if additional solar farm capacity would fit into their future, and then what locations would be desirable. And when I say locations, I'm thinking in particular about substations and size of power lines, the diameter of cables and the posts and their capacity to add either heavier lines replacing existing lines or to add more lines. Right in the middle. Yep.
So good morning. My name is Lynn Hall. I'm the Community Relations Manager for Xcel Energy. We were asked by Dan Grady to come today. I'm hoping that my counterpart, Phil Baltazar, is on the phone. Phil, are you there? Maybe not. Okay. I guess not. So he is actually the resident solar. He's the project manager for Solar Gardens. And I was hoping he was going to be on the call today because he's actually the expert on this whole thing. He did provide me the answers to your questions though, so I can read what he had said. Like I said, he is the resident expert. Any questions that you may have that I was really, and he said he was going to be on the call today. I'm not sure if he's able to
Could we
get in
call-
or
Do you
not.
have a number where we could try to call him to connect in case he's having trouble connecting?
Yeah.
Because if he's just trying to connect, maybe,
Okay, he said he'll be right there.
okay, all right, in case.
Okay, he knew that we were kind of down on the agenda, so I think he was just gonna call in just a little bit later because he's got other things going on. But hopefully. Oh, okay, okay. Is that,
That's Matt.
No.
Just maybe you could just give a little highlight of, so you're in Ashland Market, he's likely out of Ashland Market. Excel's a massive company, right?
Yep.
Across the Midwest, I believe even further, they might be national at this point, but I think that's helpful for us to understand kind of who we're dealing with a little, Excel locally and then Excel nationally. You
Yep.
could just do that maybe a little bit while
Yep.
we're waiting.
So I am the community relations rep for this area. I do 10 counties, 8 in Wisconsin, all northern Wisconsin, and then 2 in upper Michigan. So if any questions, you would come to me. And then I'm basically the liaison towards the Xcel Energy proper. And then I would relay any questions or concerns to the right people that can give you direct answers to specific topics. Yep, Xcel Energy does operate in 8 states. So we're in Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, North and South Dakota. So I would be the person that you would contact for any immediate questions or concerns, and then I could relay those out and get you contacted with the right people.
And now there's a massive, I wouldn't say massive for Excel, but for our area, you guys from the UP over to south of Ashland are going to be improving that line, right? I
Yes.
think it skirts the Bad River, but maybe it goes through it a little bit. But now you guys are going to be spending the next 3 years updating that line. Is that correct?
That is correct, yep. Currently, those transmissions lines go through the reservation, but we are going to reroute that around and go down actually by Mellon, back up to Ironwood and through. So those transmission lines will go off the reservation.
And we've got Phil now.
Yeah.
So Phil, you're on. We were just chatting a little bit about the questions that Pat had kind of submitted. Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was just having a little trouble linking in. My apologies. Yeah, I just walked in, so just trying to get my bearings here. What questions specifically are we addressing at this very moment?
Phil,
I'd be
we're
happy-
just,
yeah.
Phil, this is Lynn Hall.
Hey, Lynn. Sorry, I apologize. I had some technical challenges.
Nope, that's fine. They just asked the first question on our list. So,
Okay, yeah. So how Xcel Energy determines the solar farm capacity would fit into the future plans. So Xcel Energy isn't like directly responsible for finding a plot of land or necessarily a county, or there are like a number of factors that go into it. And there are a few different ways that we go about it. But like the best way that I can describe right now is that we're currently going through is we have issued an RFP, and our RFPs are issued from a separate department. It's kind of like, for legal reasons, there's many times like Xcel Energy has to silo our departments because there are sometimes legal reasons that one department can't know what the other department's doing because there's unfair competitive advantages. So our RFP department, our resource adequacy department is what it is. And basically they look 10 years down the line to say, okay, well, we need more power in this area or onto our transmission lines. And we can either build a gas plant, we can extend a nuclear power plant life, we can build a solar plant, we can add wind, and they issue RFPs. And we are currently in a phase where we are issuing RFPs to different developers that would come in and they would say, okay, we're going to put together a proposal and we are going to offer you an RFP for a 5-megawatt garden. And it's really upon that developer to be like, okay, where are we going to locate it? What is the prime place? And there's a number of factors there. Obviously, land is, everything takes some land, so that's a big factor. Another factor is the capacity that is available in a given area. So like capacity is like how much energy can run through those power lines to support, either consumption or generation. It's kind of like building a highway. If you're going to have a big production facility or consumption facility, you have to build more lanes on that highway to come in and go out. So those are two of the major factors that that would maybe attract a developer into a specific kind of location. Is can they get the land resource that they need at an adequate price, and then is that land resource located close to facilities that could facilitate the interconnection process of that generation facility. And those are going to be the factors. Now, the developers are, especially in this case, the developers are in the driving seat of like, okay, we issue the RFP. We're going to say, hey, we would like bids for this. Can you please go out and find those? And that's kind of what we're in the process of doing. So, do you have any questions about that process so far?
Yeah, Pat, Phil, this is Pat. So I wrote these questions, and I've got property over in Bayfield County on the farm I grew up on. And in third week of December, I received a letter from a developer looking to site a utility scale solar farm. So I've had some long conversations with them. So I would assume from that conversation that they have information, that's what it sounds like, that would indicate that if they put in a solar farm with that capacity, that Xcel could fit that into their plans. And I know that they would have to upgrade that high voltage transmission line up there to carry that. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the substation on the south side of Ashland Town and Jingles would also have to be upgraded. And now when you talk about the reroute with this, a question that comes to my mind is, would that line be designed looking forward if there's more solar capacity up here? Otherwise, my understanding is that these transmission lines have to be upgraded to carry the additional power from solar farms as they're installed. So there's all this, planning, if you will, that goes into it.
Sure.
One of the things, so there's the 100 megawatt and bigger, the Public Service Commission has control over. From what I'm reading, the economy of scales makes the return on investment greater for the large projects. So part of what I'm wondering on smaller projects, so if we do the reroute or even if we didn't, how would locally, would investors, starting with landowners, local lenders, et cetera, how would we know what opportunities are and how could we explore them to see if we would want to fit into this locally? Because right now, it's an outside firm looking at this. One Energy, is big. They put the one in that's the Ordoc Solar. They're outside this area. So these questions, in part are trying to see if we can do something locally, but also knowing, there's others looking at bigger one. So you've answered the second question, I think, in the context of the first one. And then let me go to the site that I'm particularly curious about and have been for a while. There's a 0.7 megawatt solar farm, the Ordoc Solar Farm by Xcel. The county owns 20 acres of land just to the south of that. And something I've wondered about for years is if the county has no plans to build on that land now, the county bought it a decade ago when the jail populations exploded with the opioid crisis. So with a short amount of data, a few years of data looking at jail population growth, they extrapolated out and said, oh, we'll need to build a bigger one. Never good to extrapolate with, a small set of data, but they did. That's why the county owns that land. Nice to have it, but if we're not going to use it for 30 to 50 years, I'm really curious, how could we consider additional solar capacity out there? What's the process? And then given the county owns it with rules, with units of government, what can we or not be involved with as far as the process? Because I know the state has some rules on that.
Yeah, so that specific site is one of 3 solar gardens. One of those is actually right across the street from my office here in Eau Claire. And that was kind of like a pilot project that was opened up. There was 3 megawatts that were offered in interconnection, and those have been fulfilled. So that program has now been closed and is kind of like fully, there's no opportunities for like doubling the size, let's say. However, I do say that, but there's more than one way to expand like the solar generation. One of the options that in almost all of new solar plants that are going in, solar farms that are going in, is batteries. And the reason for that is it extends the production hours. So you have a 1 megawatt or 0.7 megawatt interconnection agreement, meaning that the capacity for all of the interconnection, Xcel can support that amount of energy on the lines as it is, as the program was written, and everything has been fully updated. Now, you're dependent on the sunlight, obviously. So what batteries do is enable to produce power on some of the sides of the solar panel. And what ends up happening, well, actually, I should have said this at the beginning, is that you can add more panels, but those panels go into a solar reserve, a DC to DC storage, and then it extends the production hours. So you never go above your interconnection rating, 0.7, but you do extend the hours of production. So it essentially does increase the size of the solar farm. It doesn't increase the nameplate of the AC output, but extends the productive hours for that. That is one option that the county might be able to consider. And these are things that are kind of evolving because there aren't tons of programs involved around it, but it just has to do with the cost of battery technology that has plummeted to the point that it is now kind of at the point where it makes sense. The cost per kilowatt over the life of the battery you can squeeze out some dollars, positive dollars out of that investment. So that is something that we're seeing happening within the last 12 months of solar applications. And what we're seeing right now is there's a lot of new applications that come in, it'll be let's say a 1 megawatt size garden, but they'll create a garden that is 1.4 megawatts DC or 1.5 megawatts, and then they'll store energy and they'll just extend the production hours. So that is an option that we can talk about exploring maybe further into the future. And other than that, yeah, like so that's specific. But the nameplate rating of the interconnection agreement is going to be like we're not going to be able to do anything about that. We can just maybe extend the production hours, if that makes sense.
It does make sense because that whole topic of batteries has been part of what I've been reading, and most of these utility scales are now including, as they develop it, the capacity to add batteries, whether it's in the present or in the future. So that includes space to put those batteries, and then the sizing issues so that you're storing some of that energy, to be used at night, which then impacts the upgrades, if necessary, for the high voltage transmission lines that are there. So that makes sense. So if the county is interested in exploring that, how does that work between Xcel and the county to start that conversation after today?
Yeah, well, I would, unless the county has like somebody that's very experienced with kind of this type of electrical engineering work, I would recommend getting, maybe looking into like some type of consultant. I can't recommend anybody because of my position here, but I think that would be a logical. There is an application process. We would have to do a restudy. This would be a material modification in the interconnection. It would be kind of re-engineering your current solar garden and then adding batteries, potentially adding, there's just material modification. So we would need to go through an application process there, and we would need to go through like I said, a material modification application process. It would have to be studied. We would need to, those are all the steps that anytime we're bringing on a new solar farm, we would need to go through a similar type of, because you're basically, we need to ensure that, we would never, this generation facility wouldn't go beyond its nameplate rating or its hours of operation. Because as of right now, any solar farm that doesn't have batteries on it is studied according to the hours of operation of the sun. So depending on the capacity load or the other load factors that are on that particular feeder and or substation, like let's say if you had a dairy, there's certain hours of operation that dairies use a lot more energy than other hours. So those consumptive and generation factors are all incorporated into the studies that we do. So when those factors change and you're going to be producing megawatts of power, let's say, or 0.7 megawatts of power, and you're going to be doing that 2 hours longer, we do have to take a look at that and make sure that the system can support everything. So that's just a little bit of it, but I would strongly suggest maybe getting a consulting somebody to consult with. I would have to kind of look in to see what I can provide, because we're very our hands are tied in terms of making recommendations to third-party firms because it shows kind of favoritism. We don't want to pick favorites, but I'm sure that there's something we might be able to work out. I don't know.
So I could talk to Lynn and we could find one or more consultants to talk with and go from there then?
Possibly something along those lines. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, also, I'm not sure who built the solar array that is there now. That was years ago, I know, but, maybe looking back into whoever did the contract.
It was One Energy did that.
One Energy.
They're a large firm.
Yes. Yeah. One Energy is very active. So they would be a good candidate for you to have a conversation with.
Okay. Because I know the one that's looking at land in Bayfield County he told me that they don't, they only do utility scale.
Mhm.
Because of the economy of scales, the numbers are kind of mind numbing in terms of the investment, but also the return, you know, but it's a big investment, but big return also. So when you do that reroute, if that's what happens down there, are you going to anticipate some solar power with the size of lines you put in, or? Because
Um,
what I'm wondering is, I have to look at the map, but if Ashland County has landowners interested, in especially something bigger, it's nice to know in the planning process, if this may or may not work and fit in, otherwise it's a retrofit. Are you going to provide any information to potential developers on that line so they can look at it, decide if they have interest or not?
I'm sorry, I'm not specifically, or I don't know a lot about this line. Can you tell me a little bit more? So is there a planned upgrade? It sounds like there's a planned upgrade for maybe a transmission line.
Yeah, Phil, this is Lynn.
Hey, Len.
Yeah. So right now we're in the process of upgrading our lines from the Ashland Ironwood to Ironwood transmission line. And that's been in the process, planning for years. And now they're finally getting into the development of it. So those studies have already been conducted. And I'm not sure if they had planned for additional upgrades for that. So I can get that information for you, but as of right now, I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I'll talk to Lynn on that. I guess one good news about solar farms is across this country, there's an awful lot of high voltage transmission lines being upgraded because it's a necessary part of the process of bringing solar farms online. So it's always good to pre-plan this. And in some areas, the person I'm talking with on my property, he says sometimes there's as many as 3 solar farm utility scales wanting to connect to the same line. And so the line has to be upgraded, but depending on the numbers for the solar farm developers and the cost to upgrade the line, sometimes if one drops out and says, nope, that's too expensive for me, then the numbers work better for the remaining 2, or sometimes 1. It's a game of they have to plan and process, go through a process and plan the whole thing so that line isn't getting upgraded more times than otherwise. But it's certainly part of the process, including the substations.
100%. And it is not like, I wish there was a real direct, like you said, there's a lot of factors that go into all these things. So yeah, it's everything has to be studied specifically because where these plug into and where they're interconnected and how they affect that feeder that it's on, the substation that's on, and in general, like the larger systems are what trigger transmission studies. So we have, like this 0.7 megawatt, it probably wouldn't trigger a transmission study, meaning the power that it's generating won't change the distribution system so much that it would potentially backfeed onto the transmission. So you don't need to really study that portion of it. But once you get above 1 megawatt and you get up to like 5 megawatts, almost all 5 megawatts systems do trigger transmission studies. And so depending on, each individual situation, it could be a transmission study. And I don't know the specifics. I'm sorry about the transmission line that's being upgraded kind of in the near future. So I won't be able to intelligibly speak about that.
I did want to say one note that you had asked about the 20 acres just south of the current solar garden here. And Phil, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the ratio is like 5 to 1, so 5 acres per 1 megawatt. Is that correct?
That sounds close to accurate.
So like the 20 acres would, just do just under 5.
And we're talking, I mean, you could probably, yeah, there's more than just the solar panels. So there's easements, there's accessibility issues, there's, you want a little spacing so there's no shadows. on each of the panels. So yeah.
So 5 to 7 is the typical number, but being this far north, we're probably closer to the 7 than the 5 from what the person I'm working with tells me. But anyway, so there's that. But, so I'll talk to Lynn and hopefully get some information from you to explore going further with the, next to the ORDOC solar to see if that's possibilities. But then also I can talk to Lynn more about some other things. I'm pretty darn convinced there's going to be more solar farms up here, one way or the other.
Well, the fact that, the fact that you have a letter and you're, currently talking to One Energy, that's a good sign because they don't, they know what they're doing, and they've done it, they have the experience. And, so I mean, that's just,
No, this isn't One Energy, it's a different firm, but One Energy.
Oh, I'm sorry.
One Energy did the ORDOC solar, but this is a different firm.
Well, even if it's a different firm, I mean, generally speaking, these developers do have a pretty good idea of where, they want to dig in the soft ground, so to speak, and where the prime locations would be. So there's good reasons that they are looking there.
So just one thing to kind of make me understand. So does Excel have to issue the RFP, or does the developer come and go through the application process to kick off this request to have a solar farm or a solar garden?
So there are no, it doesn't necessarily exclusively have to be an RFP. That was one example. A lot of it has to do with state programs, state mandates, state like you can do a standard interconnection without having an RFP from Xcel Energy. The question is what tariff rate will be the purchase price of the electricity. So with the RFPs that I described earlier, those are going to be built by developers, purchased by Xcel Energy, and then like we're going to use that production in our general rate case, right? So, but we're not paying the garden operator is not retaining ownership of those RFPs, and then being paid on a kilowatt hour basis, like the model that you currently maintain with the ORDOC solar. There is another model that can be going PG2. There's a rate tariff that does support a different model for per kilowatt production, and then there can be, like we recently, about a year and a half ago, brought in a 5 megawatt solar garden in the Chippewa Valley area that has 5 large municipal, or there's a municipal, there's a university, there's a few different purchasers, subscribers of the energy of that solar garden, and they are paid, like they are basically they pay for the generation of that. So we can facilitate a situation like that, and they're just few and far between at this point, at least. They may become more prevalent, but so it doesn't necessarily have to be an RFP. There are different models in which a solar garden can be built. That's just the ones that kind of on the front burner right now.
So I just want to interject in here. There was a request for proposals put out by Xcel Energy for in December of 2025. We're looking for 3,500 megawatts of generation in the form of wind, solar, and hydro, with or without batteries. And then I can provide you that link for more information on those RFPs, but then you would obviously have to connect with, one of those contractors, whether it, be like Phil said, One Energy or you know, the person that you were talking to, because they would be putting in those bids. This is, you know, a lot, this is for our RFP. So,
Yeah, now I understand where something I read came from, the roots of it. So, yeah. Yeah. You know, thank you, Phil. I mean, I've got, you know, I think we're going to be talking again, either in meetings or outside of meetings on some of this going forward. So I appreciate your time in answering the questions so far. So I'll stay in touch with Lynn and we'll see what we can do up here and try to fit some solar in where it makes sense for everybody and keep some of that economic benefit here versus I guess I shouldn't be surprised at the size of some of the numbers I see with the investments, but also the return on solar farms. So this is partly an economic development issue. It's also with our comprehensive plan, we always talk about being, you know, energy independent. We've got, you know, obviously the power plant up here burning wood chips. So this is just another factor fitting in, trying to be proactive instead of reactive to outsiders coming in and making decisions and making the profit too.
Sure,
So,
I commend the council for, you know, getting your head in the game, so to speak.
yeah.
You know, it's not every county, you know, there's not that many counties that are actively pursuing and the options, trying to figure it out. But I commend you guys for doing that. And if I can be a continued resource for your council, I would be happy to do so. Obviously, Lynn is has a good relationship with you, and I have a good relationship working with her, and we'll be happy to you know, facilitate any of the questions that we can, and see how we can kind of help Ashland to be an active producer moving forward.
Thank you.
Hey, this is Jim here. One thing that came to my mind and I don't think has been discussed is lifespan. You know, that we've been talking about some serious investment and such, if the county got involved. And I'm sure technologies are getting better every year, but what kind of lifespan currently do these solar farms have?
Well, there's no moving parts on these solar farms. You know, it's there's two basic components, the solar panels and the inverters. And you know, everything from there is just copper and you know, connections. And so the solar panels themselves are very dependable. There is a slow degradation in the production value. It's estimated between 1% and 2% per year, but that usually it has a quicker in the first 10 years and then it slows. And so like it's, you know, after 25, well, in general, our contracts are a 25-year interconnection process. So that's how we plan our RFPs, as we think of this as going to be a 25-year, and we plan on that production. So 25 years is what we would expect. Some contracts in Minnesota that we have are 20 years, but we do expect, you know, decades of service out of these plants. And even after that, we do, I mean, there are solar, you know, systems now that have been functioning for 35 years, and they're, you know, they're not as good as they were when they first came up, but they're still functioning. The other component is the inverter. The inverters do have a lower lifespan, but the way that a you know, a solar garden is built is there's, you know, hundreds of panels and there's dozens of inverters. So you might have 100 inverters or 80 inverters on a 5 megawatt garden. You know, so those inverters, after 12, 15 years, they may need to be replaced. But that is something that is not extraordinarily expensive. Inverters are generally like $2,000, I believe. So that's you know, something that is replaced, but once that happens, then you got another, 12, 15 years of service out of the new inverters.
Thank you. Well, we've got a lot to chew on here. And thank you for coming, having a local face, knowing who we're dealing with is very helpful. So I appreciate you guys coming, and the fact that we've talked about this as much as we have, I think is fairly good at the county level. I've got a few things here that afterwards Pat and I are going to need to circle back on, but for now I think we've hit the nail on the head. So thank you again, Excel, for coming.
Thank you. And I'll provide our written answers to you, Pat. I can give you my card and you can email me, and then I can provide you those written answers. And then, yes, please feel free to contact me with anything else. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate all the information. All right, moving along then to letter C. Sorry, number C. Hudson Bay Dam engineer contract discussion. I think Matt Erickson might be on for that. Is that what he was here for? Yep. Okay. Sorry, Matt, to keep you waiting, but we're up to 5C.
Yeah, I guess it's probably more. I don't know if Bruce is there or not, but this is all working through Bruce. I just was interested in hearing the conversation, I guess.
Yeah, I can help out here a little bit. And Matt, you've been with us a little longer than me, so if there's anything I missed, go ahead and bring it up.
All right.
So I'll kind of give you guys what I know about this situation. As you can see, it started in 2019 at the DNR said that this dam was a large dam, not a small dam. And then it falls under different rules. And so they wanted this dam upgraded. I believe it's every 10 years it has to be upgraded or checked anyway. And so when I came in with this just a few years ago, what I've been finding out is they've went through a few different engineering companies, and I don't know if the engineers that were involved were too busy or if this wasn't maybe what they really cared to do. But either way, it kind of keeps getting pushed down the road. And I talked to Jacob Druffner. He's the DNR engineer out of Spooner. And he's the one who we answer to on these. And he told me himself, he said, this has been going on since 2019. He said, what's kind of going on here? And I said, yeah, it just keeps kind of getting pushed around. So I said, I'll make sure it gets moving forward. So I talked to this, I found out Todd Gibbon here from Long Island Engineering. He's a local guy, you can see. And this is actually something that he specifically works with. And I asked him if he'd be interested in this, and he took interest in it. And I thought, well, maybe we better take the opportunity that he's interested in working on this. And as you can see, if you read through here, there's quite a bit to this contract and the plan. So he sent it back. As you see the contract that we can sign if we're interested. I sure would be willing to go forward with it just to get it going. And I don't know, Matt, I think as far as I remember now, the only thing we've done so far is we got the easement and you made the trail or the road out to it. And did you put up a sign? I believe we got a safety sign up.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Yeah, from back in the Chequamegon Bay engineering days, there were some requirements that needed to be met. And we've been working on what we could do in-house. As Bruce kind of said, we were working with a Tiffany from Flambeau Engineering for years, but I mean, she don't answer phone calls, she don't answer emails. She hasn't really done anything. She did come out a couple years ago and try to find some height measurements of the dam if she could find any old survey markers, and she did not. So it's just basically just been sitting.
Yeah, and from what I talked to Todd and what I see here too is he's basically starting right from the beginning. He's going to go through step by step and make sure the DNR is going to be happy with start to finish and have this thing done with. And he can start, it looks like he can do some things before summer if we go ahead and agree with his contract. Otherwise, the majority of it's probably going to be during the summer months.
One thing to note, the cost of the contract, I mean, the county probably has to pay it up front, but I believe we can, and Dan can probably talk to this, charge the landowners around the lake for that. That was an agreement I believe is in place to create like a tax district for that. So highway department does have some costs we have accumulated over the last couple of years with especially with the road and the access to it. And we did also clean the dam off, and so it could be inspected better. But yeah, them costs can be put together and added to a tax district, I believe, to cover the costs.
Dan,
Yeah, so we can special assess the residents around Spider Lake as they're the ones who specifically benefit from this, and previous zoning committees were interested in that option.
so how long ago did we take ownership of this dam?
Well, that's still kind of contested. The DNR doesn't really know who owns it, so they're saying we own it.
Okay, because it's Ashland County. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think this is very thorough. He's local. It sounds like you trust him, right?
Yeah, I've never met him, but just from what I've talked to him, it sounds like he knows what he's doing. So,
Okay. So if this has been going on 6+ years, I think it's time as a county we step up here and we go forward. I also like the idea of a special assessment, especially given the contention around the ownership of this dam and who benefits directly from this dam. So how do we start that process, Dan?
Well, we go ahead and do the work, and then next year during budget time, we'd add a special assessment to those properties. That would happen through Jen.
I think being communicative up front about this.
yeah.
If I didn't know and I found out after, so I just think just being
They
good-
know already.
Okay, so they understand. They
Yeah.
probably don't know that the bid was this.
No, but they know they're going to be special assessed.
Okay, all right. So, okay, good. Pat?
So I may not be remembering all of this correctly from when this whole thing started, but it seemed like there was a number of issues, one of which, who owns this? If we're going to invest money into it, like it or not, do we also want to have clear title to this? And that was the whole issue, who owns this? Maybe we end up with the DNR, the landowner, and if we're going to invest in long term, if the people on that lake out there want the water level where it is, does it make sense in the process to get clear title before we invest in this? But the other part of this, the reason to own it, and maybe just be done with that issue of who owns it, is the people around that lake out there wanted the dam left at the height it was. I don't recall a clear and final decision in writing from the DNR saying the height of this dam, if it's staying at the same height. Are we talking about leaving it at the same height, or are we talking about taking it down some? Because the DNR initially wanted it down some. So are we leaving it at this height, or are we taking it down some in the process?
My understanding is we're leaving it at this height. The proposal to take it down some was to make it a small dam, and then you wouldn't have all these requirements. But if I remember correctly, the landowners did not want that to change. That was one of the things they did not want to change. They didn't want to lose that lakefront.
Yeah, so the landowners didn't want that to change, but the DNR, have they given us in writing a document saying we can leave it as is? Because if we're going to invest this money and it's at the current height, which the landowners want, which I think the board supports, I know the board supported that in the past, But then we should have in writing that it stays at the height, because now is a moment to say, okay, if you want us to own it, we won't argue about who's owning it. Give us clear title, but then also give us in writing a document that says we can leave it at the height and you're not going to bug us about that in the future. And then the special assessments, yes, the people out there are more than happy to be special assessed, but I think that should be in writing. And then this whole thing should go to the board, so it's all up front and nobody's surprised. But I'm supportive of approving the contract today, but I really want to see in writing from the DNR that we can leave the height. I don't know if one side of the DNR is talking to the other. I don't want to get a year or two down the road and then the DNR threatening to either lower the dam or take it out and saying they own it for that purpose.
So I think what I heard Pat say is that he's wanting to move forward with this engineer. And I think with Bruce and the engineer, we need to have in-depth conversations up front with the DNR to make sure that ownership is identified as Ashen County and that we can leave the height as is. So if those are the things, then I think we can move forward. We just want to ensure that those are the items up front, is that A, he's the guy and that the DNR is okay with us leaving the height of that dam.
Yeah, this is Pat, I'll make a motion to approve the contract contingent on the DNR giving clear title or acknowledging clear title to Ashland County and in writing a letter that clearly states the dam can be left at the height that it is.
Jim will second.
Okay, that was quite the motion. All those in favor of the lengthy motion? Aye. Those opposed? Okay, so we've given Mr. Blakeman the authority to have some conversations. Take it forward, Dan. Move it forward. Okay, thank you, guys. Well, that was something for number 5. Bruce, you took a whole hour of our time, man. Jeez Louise. All right, we're moving to 6. Land description discussion. Our favorite property subject to tax deed.
Right. I don't have anything new for our tax deeded or property subject to tax deed list. I think you were all provided a copy of the list, but I don't have any recommendations for foreclosure. I would like to squeeze in, if I could, related to properties that have been tax deeded, updating the list prices for properties we foreclosed on. I can pass out that list here.
So are you recommending we reduce prices?
There's one that we'll reduce price on, and then there's 5 new prices to be set.
Now, does Tony give you the ideas in these, or are you doing this?
No, these are from Tony.
Okay, directly?
Yes.
If possible, and I don't know if we're going to have one in my time, but having Mr. Jennings come in and just maybe give us an overall idea about how he feels things are going. I know I've heard from you. I think it's going better, but just get a sense from him. Market's been really slow.
Yep.
And so, I don't know, like you said, drop prices, but maybe just get an overall from Tony, not now, but at an upcoming meeting this year.
Okay. I do have some emails from him if you want me to go over those today, but okay. So most notably, so I'll start with the one we've already listed that we want to reduce the price on, which is going to be on the back. Second from the top, though, we had it listed at, it was parcel 201-04019. We had this one listed at 13,444. And Tony sent me an email. The parcel has been on the market for 72 days and he's exhausted every possible avenue to obtain a buyer for it. There have just been no inquiries at this price. So his recommendation is to reduce the price to 6,700 to get, hopefully get someone to take a chance on the lot at that price. Otherwise,
do you have an idea on that land if an adjoining owner would be interested in buying it just to keep it vacant, or if someone might consider building?
He's talked to the adjacent landowner. They were not interested in the 13,444 price. They might be more interested at this lower price.
Okay.
Yeah, he does say this price is based on research, attempts to find a buyer, conversations with surrounding property owners who refer to it as a swamp. One did indicate they might offer 6,000, but he'll follow up with them if we approve the
So now if
6,700.
if we were to sell it at 67, does the county, I know there's not like a loss per se, right? But if we look back on all the expenses and the taxes, are we gonna recoup all that, or because like in my mind, I'm not so much worried about recouping, more so just worried about getting it back onto the tax base, right?
Okay.
And so I don't want to step on your toes if I'm overreaching with that comment, because I know you have, but what's your sense of that? Like,
I don't know offhand what the expenses were on this property. I'm like 90% certain they were less than 6,000.
and that's one where Tony would then get that minimum 1,000 for the price on something like that, because that's what we kind of re-upped on.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even if we were to lose a little bit of money, we're still okay paying Tony 1,000. I'm not questioning that. Okay.
Okay.
Do you want a motion to approve that change in price? Or do you have a longer list that you were gonna ask us to approve?
We could approve the price change separately from setting these new prices, or we could do them all as one.
I'll make a motion to approve the change to 6,700.
This is Gary, I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Reducing price is approved.
Okay. And then back on the front side of the page, those parcels in the gray are new new prices. We hadn't listed those before. These are kind of our oddball parcels. A lot of them are private roads, which Tony and I had contacted the municipalities to see if they were interested in basically buying the roads from us and then maintaining them as town roads. We heard a symphony of crickets. So we're just going to go ahead and list these. Tony he said he didn't have a ton of comparables for these. So it was, he's kind of taking his best guess at these listing prices to see if any adjoining property owners would be interested in buying the road to, maintain it for themselves. So any questions?
I'm assuming that if Tony lists these and approaches the adjoining landowners, he'll get a response. Maybe they'll say yes to some of this, but he's probably gonna get some counter offers that require us to come back.
Mhm.
I'm okay with, I think what he's trying to do is get good money to start with. And if we approve this, I guess I would say to Tony that when you reach the point where if the adjoining landowners aren't interested, which are your most likely buyers by far, especially at the initial price, just come back to us soon enough so that in this year, he still has a chance to sell it and we clean this up instead of sitting on it. But, as far as the taxes go, it doesn't earn us any property tax if we own it. And so whether we're ahead or not, it doesn't earn us anything by keeping it. It's just more staff time and so.
So I guess, do you need a motion to set these values?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
This is Jim, I'll make a motion to accept new current values.
I'll second.
All right, we've got them first and a second, motion a second. All those in favor of setting these prices, vote aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right. We're setting 5 more parcels up.
6. Yeah. Okay.
So I think that was.
That's it for me. Thank you.
All right. So we've got through 6. Now we're on to 7, land records. The fee schedule.
Hey, everybody. So, I was able to process up those changes. It looks like Carisha's got it shown up on the screen, the survey review fee schedule. So this one had super minor changes. It was just some additional words. Condominium and unit was added into the second table. Any questions?
Pat's got a question.
I've got a question, but it's probably more of a Bruce question. When we talked in recent months about trying to get people to build more densely closer together to reserve, farmland and wooded land, one of the things we talked about was parcel size. So if it's under 5 acres, they needed a certified map. So my question is this: what's the difference between, say, 2 adjacent landowners wanting to build on, say, 1.5 acres or 2 acres each adjoining each other? What's the difference between that, which requires a certified map, and something called a subdivision? How do you tell one from the other?
So, oh boy, this is going off the top of my head, so it might not be 100% correct, but subdivision plat is required when you split up a parcel into 5 or more lots, and the lot sizes are like 1 or 1.5 acres or less. So it's for really small, for lots of divisions and very small parcels.
Okay, so you got something in writing to answer the question. 'Cause I could just see someone coming in and looking at the fee schedule and deciding which is most advantageous to them on fees if they're doing that, but you've got something in writing to answer the question, so
Yeah.
that's,
Yep, that's all built into the subdivision ordinance, and these are just our fees. Subdivisions,
Okay.
a subdivision plat would also require state review, and I think those have separate fees as well.
Yeah, if you look at it in the ordinance, it's specific, right? It's detailed what it is.
And we went through this recently out on Madeline Island on Town of Point, where they took a 10 or 20 acre parcel, subdivided it. We had to take that all the way to the county board. And so that does happen pretty infrequently in our county, but yes. Sorry to go off topic, Brittany. That was another Pat rabbit hole.
Don't worry.
And I think now we were through the fee schedule. We don't need a motion. That was just an update, right? Or do you need us to make a motion on that?
I don't know if these need to be motioned to take to county board. I guess that would be a Dan question, maybe.
are there any changes in this?
Just a slight tweak. She added the condominium.
I'll make a
Yeah, and then
motion, yeah.
unit.
I'll make
Yeah.
a motion to approve.
Okay, so Pat made a motion. Looks like,
Jim will second that motion.
all right, we've got a first and a second. All those in favor of approving the new survey review fee schedule for Ashland County, vote aye.
All right,
Aye. Those opposed? All right, moving on to B.
Okay, so this is the data fee schedule, and there was significant changes to this just to update it. There's been a lot of changes with the way the county does things since the previous one. So a little bit of fee pricing is changed as far as how much it costs per hour to create custom maps or data sets. And then a little bit of updating on the printing cost, just to kind of keep up with mostly printing on the plotter machine to make our big wall maps. That ink is very expensive, so just kind of bumping that up. I did compare to other counties, and so we're not quite as expensive as some of the, like Bayfield counties was kind of top pricing, but I tried to bump us up so that we're making a little bit more off of our prints for that printer ink expense. Any questions on any of this?
I wouldn't be shy about charging the cost, not just the printer ink, but the printers. That stuff is so crazy expensive. I wouldn't be shy about that. But going further up on that document, my bigger question is $65 an hour in the first part, then we see 30. Why the large difference?
Oh, the 65 is a flat rate fee, and then the $30 an hour is hourly.
So the first one, why a flat rate and how long would it typically take?
The top two are exports out. And so, you just log into the system, run the exports that needs, and then send that over. And then the hourly rates is more of creating a map. So that could be, if there's already an existing map, it's free. There's no creation there. So it's just the price of printing. And then if you're going to create a map, you've got the time sinking into it, either by myself or possibly Jennifer, depending on who puts in the request and who it goes to. And then same with the creation of data. So if someone emails me and wants like a copy of our roads layer, I can send that off for free as long as I don't have to do any edits. Now, if they wanted to see, a new proposed road or something, then I would bill them as the time it takes to draft up that and then send it to them or whatever. Does that make sense?
It does, and I guess my reaction to this is I remember some years ago when I first saw what engineers and some of those types charge in contract work, my mind was just blown at the size of the numbers. But the answer is, well, it's not just wages, it's benefits, that they pay for themselves. It's their office space, all these other costs. You end up with some pretty, big numbers. To me, if I'm looking at that $30 an hour and I'm thinking about wages and benefits and office space and overhead, I think it's low. I know there's working with, businesses, realtors or whatever, and trying to be somewhat reasonable. But at the very least, that should be in the $40 range, and really, honestly, I think more in the $50 and $60 range to recoup our staff time and full expenses, because we're providing the building, the heat and, wages and benefits and use of equipment. And if staff are like me, which I suspect they are in this way, they often spend more darn time on the phone and email working with somebody that they don't charge for, but really takes up part of their time. So I would prefer we go something at least to 40, but I would be supportive of the $50, $60 per hour range there.
Well, Pat, I'm glad you brought that up. I think $45 an hour would be appropriate for this type of discussion. I guess she said she was lower than Bayfield County. I think the $65 ones at the top is fine, but I think per hour, I think people are willing, if they're going to ask you to do a road, they're kind of taking advantage of, hey, I'm not using an engineer. You're an engineer for them, right? So $45 an hour, I think, is appropriate.
I can give a more realistic data or map creation example. A lot of times, foresters will reach out and just want to see the latest data set of section corners or our LiDAR or aerial imagery. And so to reduce time on that, a lot of times I'll just tell them I need an area of interest and then send out the data sets in that. Usually I don't have to do too much custom data creation. However, it does take me some time to clip the data so that I can share it without cost of transporting the data on the internet. So it's got to reduce the size because I can't send a terabyte of data over, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess how do you feel about the maps and data going to $45 an hour? I guess I'd kind of want to hear from you.
Yeah, I think that would be okay. Most of the time, we're not looking at requests from the general public. Usually it's a business entity, some kind of forester, surveyor, engineering firm. So I think that that price could go up without affecting our residents, really.
All right, Pat, another one?
I'm okay with the 45 then, but the note at the bottom of minimal, and it says per hour rate will be $15. Do you mean minimal charge will be 15?
That should have been minimum. Yeah. So I can get that corrected. And if we're gonna bump it to 45 an hour, we should set a new minimum rate as well.
How does 20 sound?
20's fair. I think 15, if you took it times 4, would be $60 an hour. So it's still not unfair. I mean, it's still above what your hourly rate would be. So I'm not saying we have to change 15, but if you're gonna make it 20, just nice and round.
Okay, so this is Pat. I'll make a motion to change for maps and data to $45 per hour, and then the minimal charge to $20. And then that hours will be billed in quarter-hour increments. I assume that you still want that to stay then.
Yeah, yeah, because sometimes it can be quick and sometimes it can be lengthy. So
This is Gary. I'll second it.
All right. A motion and a second. All those in favor of updating those, vote aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, thank you, Brittany, for your work on
yeah,
that.
thanks.
Appreciate it. All right, next meeting. Well, if we look out. Oh, my phone's dead. Pick a date. Is there anything you and Bruce feel like it'll be coming up? It's pretty quiet this time of year. So, April, should we go? That's the election, right? Okay. So then May 12th? Well, we'll have a committee. I won't be.
Sure.
Yes, but at the reorganization meeting, then you and the chair can make appointments, but those appointments have to be approved before the new committee can take. Yeah. Oh, so you're thinking of appointing zoning at reorg too? Okay. As long as your new chair is okay with that, whoever that may be.
See, the thing is, the May County Board meeting wouldn't be until the fourth Tuesday in May. So that's why I was asking, if we have enough people who want to be on the committee, then at reorg, we can appoint them and hold the meeting in April.
So we got the meeting scheduled for May 5th, 9 a.m. Now we're on to 9. And Jim Schultz.
Jim will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All right, we got a first and second. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Good meeting.